Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in China for the first time in 7 years and has attended the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin and has said that the New Delhi is committed to peace and stability. She has also met with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and while Russian President Vladimir Putin has received a red carpet welcome for a 4-day visit highlighting Global South solidarity. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin will hold bilateral talks on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit tomorrow, while President Putin has said that the summit will boost the SCO's ability to tackle global challenges and help shape a fairer multipolar world order. Russia has shot down 112 Ukrainian drones in the past 24 hours and struck port infrastructure used for military purposes. The Defense Ministry has said that the escalation marks one of the largest reported daily drone attacks in the conflict between Moscow and Kyiv. Israeli forces have attacked Gaza City suburbs overnight with air and ground strikes, killing at least 18 people, including 13 near an aid site. Israel is considering annexing parts of the occupied West Bank, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's security cabinet set to discuss the agenda today. Pope Leo, the first US-born leader of the Catholic Church, has urged an end to the pandemic of arms after an August 27 mass shooting at a Minnesota Catholic school that has killed 2 children. He has offered prayers for the victims of this tragedy during the prayer in St. Peter's Square. Israeli strikes on the Yemeni capital yesterday have reportedly killed the Huthi Prime Minister Ahmad al-Rahawi and alongside him other Houthi senior officials whose names have not been disclosed yet. Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto has said that political parties agreed to strip lawmakers of several perks and privileges after mass protests. The move comes amid widespread unrest over pay and housing allowances that has left at least 5 people dead in Indonesia. Thousands of Australians have marched in state capitals and regional centres today, demanding an end to mass immigration. The centre has left government strongly condemned the rallies, saying that they were linked to neo-Nazis and aimed to spread hate. Then a counter-protest was held in Sydney against demonstrators called a far-right agenda. Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in China for what the Kremlin is calling a truly unprecedented visit, lasting nearly a week. His trip coincides with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit and includes bilateral talks with President Xi Jinping, as well as Beijing's Victory Day parade, marking 80 years since Japan's defeat in World War II. At the top of this agenda is the war in Ukraine, with both leaders expected to align their positions as the U.S. pushes for a resolution. Analysts say Moscow is looking for assurances on China's support, including energy, trade, and economic ties. The visit also carries strong symbolism, underscoring Beijing and Moscow's deepening partnership at a time of strained relations with the West. Meanwhile, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has said that President Putin has already held long talks with Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan and President Xi and Kazakhstan's President Tokayev. A meeting with Azerbaijan's President Aliyev could take place tomorrow. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Keith Vaz. He's a former UK minister, joins us live from North Africa, and Andrew K.P. Long. He's a China strategist, joins us live from London. Thank you for both for joining us today. I would first like to go to Keith. Keith, how should we interpret the President Putin's extended visit to China during this summit? Does this reflect a deepening alliance, or do you think this is a strategic necessity for Moscow? Keith?
Good afternoon from North Africa.
Okay.
I think this is a very important moment in world affairs when you have three very important leaders getting together, not under the auspices of the United States or the EU, but in their own hemisphere, talking about cooperation, talking about trade, and renewing friendships. I think it's common knowledge that these three, over the last decade or so, have not been the best of friends. But it's taken, I suppose, Donald Trump to bring everyone together. It's the way in which Mr. Trump has organized his diplomacy that's regarded as such a different approach to the previous presidents, to all previous presidents, and as a result of which these three leaders have decided they've got more in common with each other than they have in common with Donald Trump. So this is a big moment, and it's good to see this kind of dialogue, especially between India and China, the two world superpowers who've not been really getting on for a variety of reasons, but now they're together. Russia and China also have had their moments, but now for the first time they are all together. So one should prepare oneself for the fact that Washington will have a story ready of some sort or another to try and take the lines away from this amazingly historic meeting. I can't think what it is, but Trump, as we know, those of us who studied Trump, loves to control the news cycle, at the beginning of the cycle and at the end. There are many books on this. So knowing this is happening there, and you've got these three giants meeting in Shanghai, Trump will make an announcement of some kind that's going to try and steal the headlines. It's inevitable, I'm afraid, especially after a week when he's been slapped down by the courts in the United States, and he's been told that he's exceeded his executive power, and therefore the whole tariff issue has got to go to the Supreme Court. But I think we should all welcome the fact that people are talking together. It's one than the big three, if you like. It includes Turkey and other countries. And I think that's very important for that hemisphere. Not everything should emanate from Washington and from Brussels. That there is life outside. And this is that these three leaders are meeting together and are having a proper and appropriate discussion. What happens at the end, I don't know. I don't know whether a communique has been agreed. Having attended many of these summits, of course, there's always a communique before you land. I'm not sure whether the ministers of foreign affairs have got a communique, but I wouldn't mind if there wasn't one, apart from the three of them shaking hands with each other, buddy-like, and that will drive the rest of the world completely insane, especially those in Washington.
Right. Thank you, Keith, for sharing that. Now, Andrea, I would like to come to you for my next question. What concrete outcomes might Russia expect from its energy and economic discussions with China during this visit? Could increased reliance on China risk creating an imbalance in this relationship?
Well, let's be real. I mean, there are still huge differences between China and India, and these differences are unlikely to disappear. As some of my Indian colleagues were saying, there's a mountain of differences between the two, not least, of course, is the border disputes, which have been lasting for decades, if not more. And there was, of course, rivalry between India and China. But as for China and Russia, it harks back to a seminal book by Brzezinski. In 1997, he wrote a book called The Grand Chessboard. On page 55, don't forget it's 1997, it's many years ago, he did warn that the greatest threat to American dominance would be if the countries like Iran, Russia, and China are grouping together. Now these three countries are being pushed together, not so much as pulled together, by Trump's American first hegemony and coercion. And this hegemony and coercion and bullying tactics are applying not only against China and Russia, perceived as the existential threat to American dominance, but to Americans' long-time allies. The transatlantic relationship, for example, is now fracturing. The European countries, regarding normally relying on American as a reliable ally, are now being rattled, by all these indiscriminate tariffs, and even Canada, north of America. So I think that this is a disruption of the whole world order, affecting both allies and countries around the world, not least the developing world in the global south, provides a kind of dynamics for countries in the global south to rally together, not so much to form a bloc against the United States, because no country wants to be an enemy of the United States, not least China or India. But it provides an opportunity for countries in the global south to recalibrate their relationship with the most powerful country at the moment, of course, the United States, with its unilateralism. As I said, not to form a bloc, but how to navigate the treacherous waters and also recalibrate the relationships with one another between China and India, between other countries in the global south. And the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is very different from what it was when it was first formed. Of course, it was led by China, Russia, and consisting only of the landlocked Central Asian countries. Now they are now including observer state members or dialogue members, including countries in the Middle Corridor. The Middle Corridor, of course, I'm talking about Azerbaijan and Armenia, and that's the corridor which links China with the through Central Asia to the rest of Europe, bypassing some of the trouble spots in Russia. And it's a very important conduit because it connects the Central Asia countries beyond with China and Asia. And of course, it will include, as my colleague was saying, countries like Turkey and Egypt, but above all the chief players in the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait, and additional countries in Asia, including Cambodia. So you can see that all the key players are now grouping together, and only recently, during the past couple of years, to make the Shanghai Cooperation a much more influential organization. As I said, not to form a bloc, because the idea of a bloc doesn't work anymore. And there's also rivalry and confrontation between these various differences between these countries. But again, opportunity to discuss and how to navigate this very changed world order, pivoting towards a more peaceful, a more prosperous, a more cooperative kind of international environment.
Right. Thank you very much, Andrew, and Keith, both for joining us and sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic. Now, the 2025 Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit has opened today in Tianjin, bringing together more than 20 leaders. Key issues on the table include regional security, counterterrorism, trade, energy, food security, and new frontiers such as cyber defense, artificial intelligence, and Belarus's membership. In latest developments, Russian President Vladimir Putin has held a positive conversation with Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and discussed Russia's recent contacts with the U.S., with Chinese President Xi Jinping as well. Now, according to Kremlin and Putin aides, the summit started strongly with significant attention on President Putin, though he has yet to meet Azerbaijan's President Aliyev, and President Xi hosted a toast at the welcome banquet, while volunteers contributed their energy and vigor to support the summit's events. The final day of the 2025 SCO Summit is on September 1st. That will focus on formal sessions, key speeches, and adoption of major documents, including the Tianjin Declaration and a 10-year development strategy. Leaders will discuss regional security, economic cooperation, and cultural exchanges under the Shanghai spirit. Chinese President Xi Jinping will deliver a keynote on peace and cooperation in the global south, with other leaders including President Vladimir Putin. informal bilateral talks may continue on the sidelines. Now for this discussion, we are joined by Keith Vaz. He's a former UK minister, joins us live from North Africa, and our other guest, Andrew KP Long. He's a China strategist, joins us live from London. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, Keith, looking at Russia and Ukraine's war, with the Ukraine war and Russia war high on this agenda, what role can China realistically play in influencing Russia's stance? Do you think there is a strategic benefit for China in maintaining the status quo rather than pushing for any solution there?
Well, you're addressing your question to me, right?
Right, Keith is not with us, so Andrew, thank you for staying with us. Please, may I repeat the question?
Hello?
Yep, Andrew, should I repeat the question?
Well,
yeah.
Yeah. I think that as far as Ukraine is concerned, China is walking a very tight rope because the respect for countries' sovereignty is a central core of China's policy. For example, over Taiwan and over China's claimed territories, the Indian border. So territorial integrity is a core tenet of China's national policy. But then Ukraine, of course, is a recognized country by the United Nations, and obviously, it was invaded. China cannot be seen to be in support of what Russia is doing. But on the other hand, China and Russia are almost joined by the hip. Not so much that they are wanting to form a bloc against the United States, but then the two countries' economies are extremely complementary. Russia, one of the world's largest exporters of energy and agricultural products, and China remains the world's largest customer. So this relationship has been going on for decades, for many, many years. But on the other hand, it's not as if everything is on all fours. Obviously, there is a degree of rivalry of influence between Russia and China in the Caucasus. And of course, if you look at the history, a large part of the Russian Far East was seized from China during China's Qing dynasty by the Tsars during the Catherine the Great during the Russian dynasties. So I think that there is a lot of historical backdrop to this kind of caution. But on the other hand, China, as I said, has been the economy is extremely complementary, and it continues, of course, buying oil and energy from Russia because that's been going on for ages. But China is being accused of helping the war. But of course, for China, this is part of the close economic relationship, which has existed in decades, well before the war. But Donald Trump is now trying to differentiate China's purchase of Russian oil from what India is doing, because India is also profiting from buying cheap oil from Russia and possibly on sale, selling this oil to other nations. And Trump is imposing huge tariffs on India. The distinction is that, of course, before the war, India didn't buy any oil from Russia to speak of it. And obviously, India was seen to be profiting from the war. And that's why Trump is imposing tariffs on India. But as far as the China-Russian relationship is concerned, I don't think that they are likely to be someone who's can drive a wedge between them. As I said, the two countries are extremely complementary. And now, because of what Trump is doing, the two countries are even pushed even closer together, reminiscent of the warning by Brzezinski, Kissinger's mentor, in this seminal book called The Grand Chessboard back in 1997.
Right. Thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us and sharing that insight. Always great hearing from you. Now we move on to Middle East. In response to Israel's major strike in Sana'a that has killed Yemen's Houthi Prime Minister, Houthi leader Abdul Malik Al-Huthi has vowed to escalate attacks against Israel. This comes a day after Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has declared the strike a historic blow and promised continued action against Houthi leadership. Tensions are expected to rise as both sides harden their stance. Let's listen into what the leaders of Yemen's Houthi rebels has said.
نواجه العدو، نستهدفه، نكبده الخسائر، ننفذ العمليات بشكل مستمر، ومسارنا العسكري في الاستهداف للعدو الإسرائيلي سواء بالصواريخ والطائرات المسيرة أو بالحظر البحري مسار مستمر ثابت تصاعدي.
Now for this discussion, we are joined by Karis Ria. She's a Middle East affairs expert, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Karis, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now looking at this, how might this action reshape the balance of power in Yemen and Houthi?
Thanks for having me. This is really an incredible strike. I mean, it's not just the Prime Minister of the Houthis. It looks like the entire chain of command, the upper echelon of the Houthi military apparatus has been eliminated with this strike. This is a good thing, not just for Israel, but for Yemen. The Houthis are essentially a breakaway state from southern Yemen. And I don't know if the Houthis will be able to recover from this. It kind of reminds me of the exploding pagers operation that decimated Hezbollah to the point where they are no longer a formidable, considerable threat in terms of launching strikes against Israel. And so hopefully we'll see that with the Houthis as well. And like I said, this is a good thing. The Houthis are just a proxy of the greatest terrorist state in the world, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran. And they are one of the last proxies that have been showering Israel with drones and rockets. And if Israel can eliminate this threat, then they can be 100% focused on the war in Gaza and actually getting their hostages home and getting Hamas eliminated as a political power in the region.
And do you think this will complicate or catalyze regional negotiations which were involving Gulf states as well as external powers like US?
No, I think this will only contribute to a flourishing Middle East. I mean, Saudi Arabia, which is one of the biggest partners in these negotiations, is no friends of the Houthis. The Houthis have been wreaking chaos in Saudi Arabia since they came to power. Most of the Gulf countries understand that Iran has been trying to destabilize their regions and is responsible for trying to overthrow governments from Jordan to Saudi Arabia to Israel, and even places like Kuwait. So if anything, I think this will be one step in the direction of peace and the securing of even more Abraham Accord countries to, or more countries to join the Abraham Accords.
And now with Prime Minister Netanyahu promising continued operations, what do you think, is there any risk for Israel's security posture and international standing?
International standing. I think that Israel needs to step up and for once not give 1 second of thought to what the world thinks about them. The world has always had a hyper focused sensitivity, microscopic obsession to whatever the Jews are doing. And this one single Jewish state, the size of New Jersey, in a sea of countries that are 50 times its size, 56 Muslim states around the world, and yet all of the focus from the international institutions and from the media and from academia is on this tiny little state and their desperate attempts to live in peace and survive without terrorist proxies of Iran or Muslim Brotherhood militias trying to throw them into the sea and destroy the nation state of the Jewish people. So I think that while Netanyahu has a fine line to walk and he's always trying to cater to both sides, I think that if Israel actually really listened to international public opinion, then it would not exist today. And the only guarantee for its survival is if it ignores the choruses of condemnation and does what's in its own interest. It's the people's interest, not the government's, the people of Israel, which is trying to survive and trying to ward off the enemies on their borders.
And also, do you foresee this attack on Huthi Prime Minister? Do you think this will escalate tensions between Israel and, again, Iranian-backed groups across the Middle East?
I don't think you could escalate tensions any more than they already are. I mean, when you have a terrorist state like Iran that has publicly declared over and over and over that its intent is to wipe Israel off the map, that it does not believe that a living, breathing country of 9 million, 10 million people does not have a right to exist, that the state of Israel, again, not the government, the state of Israel, the sovereign state of Israel, should be pushed into the sea and replaced with a 57th Arab Muslim country. I don't think you could escalate tensions more than that. So no, I think all of Israel's actions are trying to de-escalate tensions in order to create a world where the Iranian regime is no longer a threat to Israel, to the Gulf countries, and to the West.
Thank you very much, Karislia, for joining us as a Middle East affairs expert from Washington. This is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.